lots of blood and gore. 5, 6, Freddy's goofy tricks. 7, 8, another deadly fate. 9, 10, never podcast again.
If you think you'll get out alive, you must be dreaming.
Woo! So that's the tagline, huh?
Pure so, based on this poster that makes no sense.
Well, how does the poster make no sense?
Look at it. So it has like none of the characters on it, but Freddy. Like the characters that are on it are not the same characters.
Really? Okay, let me look at this. Is this something we should put at the end of the episode?
I don't know.
Yeah, there's a man with a baseball bat who looks buff. There is a man with a mace. There is the punk girl in a completely different outfit. And then there's someone who doesn't look anything like Patricia Arquette.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but I think that's supposed to be Nancy because she has the
like
gray streak.
What gray streak? Where do you see that?
In the middle of her hair, there's a gray streak on this poster.
It's definitely not her, though.
No, it's not.
Anyway.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Macabre Podcast Universe.
Hello.
It is another in a gripping series of sick editions. Jordan is still sick. You're probably hearing episode after episode of Jordan sick.
My throat hurts so bad.
And guess who has 2 thumbs and isn't sick? This guy.
As usual.
Yeah, so here we are. We're talking about the Nightmare on Elm Street series. And we are talking about the 3rd entry in the series.
Dream Warriors.
Dream Warriors, yes. And so, Jordan, what is your experience with this movie?
First time I watched it was, I don't even know if it's been a year. Has it been a year?
I think it's been a year, yeah.
Since we first watched it. And it rocked my world. It was so cool. That's about it.
Yeah. And then I watched it with you.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are. And we watched it again. And it
rocked
still
my
rocks.
world even more, I think.
So, as I've often cited and will continue to cite, I was watching Never Sleep Again, the documentary that covers the entire franchise. And I found out that the Heather Langenkamp, who plays Nancy, and Robert Englund both said that this is the movie they hear the most that is people's favorite.
I think this is going to be my favorite one.
Yeah. Well, and I didn't know if our opinion, having not been a part of the Freddy universe, the Nightmare universe, until 1 year ago, I didn't know if it was a hot take or not to think this one's the best one.
Right.
And we've watched 5 before we started doing this series, and now we're rewatching those first 5. And I was just like, 3 is just so superior to the rest
that we've seen so far. Yeah.
Yeah, and it turns out that's what people think.
Oh, okay.
Which is, it's always a tiny bit of a bummer when you think the same way as everybody else, but it's undeniable with this one.
I don't feel that way anymore. It feels like a high school feeling.
Yeah. I guess I think with our podcast, it's still fun to have a couple of nice hot takes every couple of series, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, watch this movie. It's really good. And if you've been listening along, you know, you have Wes Craven making the first one. Mm-hmm. No intention of a sequel. It does really well. They make a sequel. The sequel's a smashing hit, but it's a critical failure. It's since become a little more embraced, but that's over the course of years.
Yeah, decades.
Yeah. And then, you know, they're seeing the box office receipts and they're like, we got to make another one. But since 2 was a big disappointment, they go to Wes right away. Because remember, when he was kind of uninterested with the sequel and what they had written, they just moved on without him.
Uh-huh.
But this time they're going, we gotta work with Wes. And so he came up with a new idea, and this was with his writing partner Bruce Wagner, who is actually a novelist and also wrote screenplays for Young Lust and White Dwarf. They came up with, I think, the bones of this movie, but the producers felt like their script just didn't. It had no rules, and therefore nothing was scary.
And the first one?
No, this movie.
Sorry. Yeah.
So, they wanted someone else to help write it,
mm-hmm.
And so they talk to Frank Darabont and Chuck Russell. Now, Frank Darabont famously Shawshank Redemption, The Mist, I think The Green Mile, a big, really good adapter of Stephen King's work.
Well, besides The Mist, but yeah.
Although I've heard that it seems like everybody likes that movie except you.
I know.
I haven't seen it.
I don't like the ending.
Yeah.
It's the ending.
But yeah, so you have Frank Darabont and Chuck Russell, and they start working on it, and then Craven is unavailable because he starts filming Deadly Friend. So then Chuck is going to make this movie. And they did a rewrite, and they focused on making the movie much more imaginative, which I think is the key to this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have something you need to share?
No, I'm just looking at people that you're talking about.
Oh, okay. So, but their script was making it the budget explode. But on top of that, the original script, according to Chuck, he said it was kind of profane, and Wes was really making it dark and gross. And so they're working on it, and budget's getting bigger because they are coming up with these crazy set pieces like a Freddy worm, etc. But yeah, so then they start working on the movie. It's Patricia Arquette's first movie. And
it is?
Yeah.
I should know that, but it is?
The effects are the brunt of the budget.
Uh-huh.
Clearly.
When did this movie come out?
It came out
1987.
on February 27th, 1987. So the budget of the movie is $5 million, and then it makes $44 million at the box office.
She was only 19.
Wow. So the budget of the movie is $5 million, and it made 44.
Good.
Yeah. But what I think, and what all the producers and writers and actors were saying is like this movie seems to do several things. So it establishes a more like imaginative approach to the movies. It establishes a lot of the lore regarding Freddy. You know, we learn his backstory. And then the third thing this establishes is like the pop culture icon that is Freddy. So part of that is that he's pretty zany in this movie.
Uh-huh.
But I found out that, have you ever heard of the band Dokken?
No.
Okay, very, very famous band in the 80s, hair metal.
Okay.
Crazy shredding guitar stuff. Exactly what you're picturing in your head is exactly who Dokken is. And they were huge, and the studio said, hey, can you write a song about the movie? And so they wrote this song called Dream Warriors. And they're in the documentary as well, and they're like, this song is like an indelible part of who we are as a band.
Wow.
Because everywhere we go, people have the single, people request us to play it, all of those things.
Uh-huh.
And so Dokken writes this song, Dream Warriors, and they make a music video for the song. Now, this is, according to them, this is the first time someone had done this, where they are taking footage from the movie and putting it in the music video.
Oh, okay.
And then the music video has a couple of extra shots, and the band is playing as well in sets that look like they're from the movie. And then the movie ends with, because they're kind of like fighting Freddy, you know, with the gang mixed in with the footage of the movie. And then the music video ends, and Freddy wakes up, and he goes, "Oh, that was a weird dream. Who were those guys?"
That's cool.
Yeah, so it was kind of like the first time that happened, and they kind of cited that as like this kind of launches the movie into like a different pop culture zone.
Oh.
And then having Dick Cavett in the movie as well, and he's the talk show host that the TV girl is watching.
He was real.
Yeah, he's a real host. And they approach Dick Cavett, and he says, "Yeah, I'll do it, but he wants to choose who the guest is."
Interesting.
So he says, "I would like you to choose and have Freddy kill Zsa Zsa Gabor because she's so stupid, and I would never have her on my show."
What?
And so that would be like the perfect guest for Freddy to kill.
Yeah. That is a wild story.
Yeah.
So who is that lady? Just an actress?
She's an actress and some other stuff. I didn't really recognize her, but I've heard that name.
Yeah.
She's one of the famous famo people, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit of a blind spot for me.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, so
That's
he
wild.
requested that, and she's in the movie, kills it, or gets killed.
Yeah.
And so that too kind of puts it in this other stratosphere where like Freddy's being zany. He's meeting with people that are in our real world and stuff like that.
I just assume because this is somewhat low budget horror,
Yeah.
that those people were just made up.
I actually did too, but the name Dick Cavett, it's like I know that name,
Uh-huh.
but I'm just too young to like know who that is.
Uh-huh.
But yeah. So all those things. So this movie, yes, establishes more imagination, more Freddy backstory, and then of course pop culture. Because they even were showing that like when they were getting those, that the movie's like #1 at the box office, like horror movies didn't do that kind of money.
Mm-hmm.
And then this movie comes out, and then now it's like, okay, this is a huge big deal. This is in the zeitgeist. Like everybody knows Nightmare on Elm Street.
Cool.
So this movie is responsible for like cementing its place in horror,
Cool.
I think.
Had no idea.
I didn't either. Yeah, I mean, because we really didn't have any. I just knew it was a famous series. I didn't know about it. While they were filming the movie, though, there was a lot of tension on the set as Chuck was not an experienced director. Huge budget, huge practical effects, and then he's also not working super well with the actors.
Oh.
But and he's also wanting to push Freddy further and make him, stranger and more zany and crazier. And the studio's kind of like, no. So he's having all of those fights on set everywhere.
Uh-huh.
And there was I can't remember the one. Who's the kid who gets strong? Kincaid.
Okay.
That's his character name. He said he remembered a day on set where they're in that last like dream room, and it was just so intense that a producer like got everyone's attention, and the producer's like, you guys all have to knock off this shit because we have to film this, and everybody's got to just cool it. Let's do this.
Whoa.
Yeah, top 10 grosser of the year. Chuck Russell also goes on to do The Blob, the Jim Carrey Mask, Eraser, The Scorpion King. The screenplay is Wes Craven and Bruce Wagner, who did the story as well. Story by credit, and then Frank Darabont and Chuck Russell did a draft as well. Cinematography is by Roy H. Wager, or Wager. He's done a bunch of episodes of Quantum Leap and CSI. The music is by Angelo Badalamenti, who is a David Lynch guy. Blue Velvet, Twin Peaks, Mulholland Drive, etc., etc. And those are the notes on Dream Warriors.
Cool. Well, like you said, and I totally knew that this is Patricia Arquette's first movie.
Uh-huh.
But she is also in True Romance, Boyhood, Medium, Stigmata, Severance. She's an Arquette. It's fun to talk about her in a horror franchise when we've talked about her brother.
Uh-huh.
Ken Sagos plays Kincaid, like you were just talking about. He's also in the fourth movie. Don't remember that.
I don't remember that
Maybe
either.
it's a flashback, but I don't remember that.
Huh.
He's also in Nation's Fire, No Solicitors. He's in an It's Always Sunny episode. Oh, I recognize him.
Is it The Gang Goes Black?
No. Hold on, let me look it up.
And I'm not just saying that because he is black. I'm just saying I like remembering his face kind of in that episode, I think.
He plays Carl. And it doesn't tell me what episode.
Okay, I'll look for it while you keep going.
Ken Sagos. I think that he's in The Gang Dines Out. That's my guess. But I might be wrong. Rodney Eastman plays Joey. He's the silent kid. He's also in I Spit on Your Grave. I think that's a remake, right?
I don't know
I Spit on Your Grave. Hoax, Sable, Foreign Land, NCIS.
The Gang Dines Out. You were
wow.
right.
It's the part when he's part of that family with the troop that came home and they're all celebrating him.
Yeah.
And Dee's like, come over here. She's like, she says something to him like, these guys are watching me. And he's like, oh shit.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
the waiter comes over and he's like, you found a friend.
That's right.
That's who he is.
Yes.
That's fun. Jennifer Rubin plays Taryn. She's also in The Crush, The Doors, Screamers, Untold, Heebie-Jeebies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of thriller horror stuff. Bradley Gregg plays Philip. He is in Stand By Me. Don't know who he is. He's the kid that threw
at the
himself
beginning.
off.
Yeah.
Class of 1999, Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade.
He really did look like, he was in
other stuff.
Well, no, I think, I feel like he's one of the kids in Stand By Me. Or
no, I don't think he's one of the kids.
Or maybe he's a bully.
I'm thinking he's with Kiefer.
Yeah.
That's my guess.
I haven't seen that movie in a very long time.
No, that movie's so good. Ira Hayden plays Will, the glasses kid, the wizard.
Mm-hmm.
He's a father of the bride, Alias, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark.
He was very excited.
Wow, he's in Powderpuff Girls.
To do the Dungeons and Dragons in this. And
that's fun.
He sounds like he does in this movie, even 20 years later. And he was very much like, I was excited to, do Dungeons and Dragons, and that's what I did in real life and stuff. And
he was so
when
cute.
he becomes the wizard, I mean, that's one of the great moments of the movie and stuff.
Oh, cute.
Yeah.
Penelope Sudrow plays Jennifer, the girl with the TV.
Okay.
She's in Amazing Stories, Dead Man Walking, After Midnight. Oops. And a lot of other stuff. And then Lawrence Fishburne, we have covered because of John Wick.
And isn't he billed as Larry in this movie? Larry Fishburne?
Probably. I'm not just seeing that readily right
Yeah.
now, but that's what we've heard. And I can't remember when we were watching the movie last night.
Yeah. I think I turned away to start taking notes and I missed his billing.
Yeah. And then Craig Wasson, who plays Neil Gordon, the doctor.
Yeah.
He's also in Body Double, Four Friends, Malcolm X, Ghost Rock, New Alcatraz, and so on and so forth.
Okay. So that's the gang, eh?
Mm-hmm.
So the movie opens with a quote from Mr. Death himself, Mr. Scary himself, the original Hitchcock. I'm talking about Edgar Allan Poe.
I don't know if anyone's ever said that about him, but okay.
And the quote is this: "Sleep, those little slices of death, how I loathe them."
I love it.
Great tone setter.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're seeing all this close footage of this house being created.
Out of paper mache.
Yeah, and it's before you know who it is, it's definitely shot very creepy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're supposed to kind of think that this is like a Freddy-esque.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he's doing this or he's creating a dreamscape or something. But then we quickly find out that it is Patricia Arquette.
Mm-hmm.
And
she's so young.
So young.
She's trying to stay awake.
Yeah.
And she's building this house that we may or may not recognize yet. But she's waiting for her mom to come home, and her mom comes home with a dude. She just doesn't want to sleep because she's having bad nightmares.
Yes.
But her mom makes her go to bed.
Yes, and she's trying to stay awake by eating powdered coffee and drinking Diet Coke, which is a smart move, but really intense to look at. But yeah, so I think that the mother touch in this movie is phenomenal.
I agree. She's so good. Let's look her up.
She is so good, and this like
Brooke Bundy. Whoop. Uh-oh.
What?
Bundy.
Uh-oh.
She is also in the fourth movie. I don't remember that. She is also in Star Trek The Next Generation, Mission Impossible, the show.
Oh, wow.
And I'll just, and so many things.
Yeah.
Those are highlights.
So what I love about this, and something that I think it was one of the writers was pointing out how like one of the fun things about Nightmare on Elm Street is that you're put in these situations where the parents are like, they're either kind of absent or they just don't believe their kids, which you and I have noticed is a very American fantasy storytelling thing. Because when you watch like Studio Ghibli movies, like I think of My Neighbor Totoro, they get to that new house, the kids, and they're like, oh, there's all these spirits around. And the dad's like, oh, cool. These are those types of spirits. And he never has to like go on a quest to believe them.
Yeah.
But in American movies, it's always like, oh my gosh, don't let my parents find out that E.T.'s here. Or like it's always, and I think a lot of that has to do with just like our psychology of the nuclear family and all of that stuff. But what they pointed out, what's awesome about these movies is it kind of preys on those fears, and having your parent not believe you is literally going to cost you your life. And at the time, there was also a lot of stuff in the news and whatnot of people being put in, mental asylums and hospitals, kids, and there was like kind of a crisis of like, what are we going to do with the kids? And so
is this what you got from the documentary?
Yeah, they were mentioning this. And so this is just sort of, this movie is kind of playing on that idea where it's like you have this, mother who is more interested in getting laid that night than her daughter who needs her. And then her solution is not to help her in any way, but just to lock her up and hopefully they'll sedate her.
Yeah.
And nobody believes
her. She
just
wants attention is what she keeps saying.
Yeah, and the only person that believes him in this movie is Nancy, who experienced it. And even her father, who we find later in the movie, he doesn't believe her really either. I think his is more he doesn't want to believe.
Yeah.
But he has like lived through killing Freddy and then also being a part of A Nightmare on Elm Street, the first movie, and even he, as an adult figure, like doesn't want to believe in it. So, yeah.
So well said, Micah. Good job.
Well, there's a lot of stuff in this movie. I mean, it's a good movie, and I remember when we were watching it, when we got to the part where they're in like the group setting and the psychologist is talking to them and they're all talking. I was kind of like, is this like really good? I mean, I'm kind of really digging this, and I think for the most part, the acting in this movie's pretty awesome.
Oh, totally. This movie rocks.
There's a couple of whiffs here and there, but nothing that ruins it in any way. And even, we'll get to it later, but there's a scene in the movie where I literally wrote, this is the worst scene in the movie, but I had forgotten the what happens at the end of that scene. And when I saw what happens, I was like, no, it's not. This scene is also cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Patricia Arquette falls asleep, and we have this great sequence where she gets up from her bed, and it is sitting in front of the Elm Street house. And she starts walking through it, and this little girl's outside, and this is where we discover
kids are jump roping, doing jump rope.
They're doing the theme song. 1, 2, da da da, and then this little girl goes inside
on a bike.
And there's like isn't there some implication about the kids living there?
Well, the implication is that those are the kids that he murdered.
Right.
Because Patricia Arquette follows her all the way to the basement, finds a little girl, and then the heater or the boiler or whatever turns on. The furnace turns on.
Yeah.
Suddenly, and the girl says, "Freddy's home."
Creepy. And she also finds this.
There are human bones in the furnace.
There are, yes. So a couple of special effects details here. The pig was a real smoked, dried out pig.
Whoa.
Because they were going to make an animatronic, but it was like astronomically expensive.
Oh, okay.
So they just did that and then puppeteered it. But they said one of the guys who was working on the scene says like, I can smell that smell to this day.
Yeah.
And it makes me sick. And then one of the guys, and I apologize, I don't remember his name, but he created, because there's that room where there's all the hanging kids.
Yeah.
And then there's bones that she like picks up or something. Like I think when she grabs the little girl,
she's holding
there's
the
bones.
little girl and running through the house away from Freddy.
Yeah.
And she turns into a skeleton.
Yes. So he designed one that they said was too scary and they couldn't put it in the movie. Because
really?
And they I think they told him to do this, but he based it on like Holocaust stuff.
Ooh.
Like he looked at
yeah.
pictures of like children in the Holocaust and like created this thing. And they showed a picture of it. Pretty gnarly.
Of like burned remains?
No, it was just like emaciated / burned remains that she's holding, because they did create it.
Yeah. No, of course. Yeah.
And I don't like the Holocaust connection. I mean that makes me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But the final product I think is more effective.
So
than
that room
skeleton.
with all the hanging people.
Yeah.
Is that symbolic of like because the kids, when she goes to the mental ward, like people think that these kids are just killing themselves.
Yeah.
But it's Freddy.
Yeah, it is that.
So it's like those are the other kids he's collected.
Yeah. Cool touch. Scary, but cool. Another touch that I love is she's getting chased by Freddy and she's holding this girl. And there's a point where I thought to myself, like, oh man, it's always funny in movies when you can tell that they're, carrying a doll or whatever. And then when she stops and looks down, it's a skeleton. And it's like, oh, that works because that she isn't carrying a girl, even in the logic of the movie.
Yep.
It's cool.
Yep.
Yeah, and I wrote too that the mood is already so much darker and like moodier than the second movie. Mm-hmm. Which the second movie, hey, I'm still not throwing stones at the second movie.
Second movie's a party.
Yeah. Then she wakes up, she goes to the bathroom, grabs her faucets, and the faucets turn into Freddy hands that attack her.
It was so cool.
And he's in the mirror.
And I love the it was just so effective. There was just a streak of blood that goes across the mirror. And we don't really know like what happened. And then the mom comes in and Patricia turns around and it's always so gross when you see that in a movie, but she had cut herself, but she didn't do it like Freddy did it.
Yeah.
And she faints.
Yeah. And so then she gets sent to the hospital, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we get introduced to Larry Fisher. And this always works for me. Like Lawrence Fishburne's walking through the hallways and we get introduced to all of our kids in like a couple of shots where he's like, "Hey Joey, no, still not talking today," or whatever. Mm-hmm. "Oh, you, Kincaid, what's up?" etc. Goes through and kind of meets everybody. And especially when you're in a new location and stuff, it's just an effective way to get the ball rolling. Mm-hmm. Especially when you're dealing with, 5 or 6 main characters. Mm-hmm. So I think I love that part. And then we get introduced to, what is his name?
The doctor dude.
The doctor.
Hold on. His name is Neil.
Neil. And he mentions that there's this person that's going to be coming.
Grad student.
Yeah.
And he says something like, "Why are we treating this grad student like a celebrated old, like distinguished person?"
Yeah.
And
then now I'm seeing that this is where I think the melting bike, the pig, then the room falls. So she's back in the dream world. I think we got confused at where Patricia was dreaming.
No, they're trying to sedate her and she's freaking out.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Because they talk about that and then he's going to meet the new patient. They're trying to sedate her. She's freaking out because she doesn't want to go to sleep.
That's right.
And she cuts Lawrence Fishburne with a scalpel. And then Nancy shows up.
Yes.
Well, Patricia gets into a corner and starts singing the song. And then Nancy shows up and she's like, "Where did you learn that song?"
Right.
And they hug and that calms her down.
Yes. And Nancy has a white streak in her hair, which is interesting.
Why?
I don't know why she has that.
That happened
in the first movie.
Micah.
I forgot. Yeah. Edit that out. Cut that. So then Patricia falls asleep again. And she is in this room, and the room just starts exploding.
Well, not yet. Nancy talks to Patricia's mom and is trying to get, she's actually asking her questions about her daughter. And the mom's like, I don't know, aren't you the professional? Aren't you the one who's supposed to give me answers? She's just doing this for attention. What do you want from me? And then she's like, I have to go downtown. And then Nancy goes upstairs to get Patricia because they're at her house.
Yeah.
And she sees the house that Patricia's working on. And Nancy says, I lived in this house. How do you know this?
Yeah. All of this stuff, I'm like, okay, we're wheeling and dealing. This is good stuff. And it feels, it doesn't feel like a cheap bring back of Nancy.
Mm-mm.
It feels earned. It makes sense.
Makes sense that she'd be interested in this psychology field because of what's happened to her and all of her friends died.
Yeah, so I get it, and I like it.
Mm-hmm.
And then Patricia's asleep.
Okay.
Or am I missing another part? Okay. And she's in this room, and the room starts exploding and shredding from the outside in. Looks incredible. And right then and there, you're like, wow, this is amazing.
So good.
She is screaming at the top of her lungs. Great. Then there's something under the carpet that comes flying toward her. Okay, cool. And then this giant worm with Freddy's face bursts out and starts attempting to eat her. Now, the worm is very large.
Oh, it's huge, and it's actually eating her.
And it's just a real effect.
Oh, it looks so good.
It looks incredible. And there's not even that much to say about the special effects of it all, because you just look at it and you're like, I understand that is a thing that they built and did.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? It's that simple.
And then when Nancy shows up, because Patricia, she has the ability to pull people into dreams or connect dreams. So Nancy has fallen asleep, and Patricia doesn't know that she pulled her into her dream, but she did.
Yeah.
Nancy finds her, saves her, and then the worm goes up, and it's the face is anthropomorphized.
Yeah.
And he's talking to them.
It's freaking cool.
It is so cool.
And beyond that too, even the small things in this movie are cool. Like when Nancy falls asleep, she stands up and then falls in her chair and just falls through the chair, and it kind of looks amazing.
Uh-huh.
And then they're able to get out of the dream.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to point out, years ago, I think I was on Twitter or something, and I just saw this picture of Patricia Arquette. It was a landscape picture, and she's on her elbow on her side, and then from her waist down, there's a giant worm monster eating her, and she's got a big smile on her face, like a behind-the-scenes photo. And I remember I saved the photo because I was like, this is so cool. I love this, and it's kind of hilarious. And I did not know what that was from. I didn't know anything about it. And then when we were watching the movie, I was like, no way! This is that picture. So
you solved it.
It's a big puzzle piece into the puzzle.
Cool
moment. I mean, that puppet thing is probably my favorite of the series that we've seen.
Me too, maybe. Yeah.
It's just too cool.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of great, crazy kills in this beyond that. There's one that is actually kind of tough to watch in this movie. Can you guess which one I'm talking about?
The strings.
Yeah, that one's tough. That one hurts. But yeah, so then basically everyone thinks that the kids are all crazy except Nancy. And they have this group conversation. We kind of meet all the characters again. And I just want to point out, I think Taryn is excellent in this movie.
She is so good.
Her performance is weirdly modern.
Okay, that's what I was thinking too. There was something about her that felt so, I don't know, like I just saw it in a Today movie. So you felt the same way.
I felt both times we watched it, I was kind of blown away by her performance.
Okay, I am absolutely blown away by it too.
And I think everyone's good in this movie.
Uh-huh.
But there's something about her, and she has this backstory where she used to be a drug addict.
Mm-hmm.
Now she's not anymore. And then she's haunted by these dreams. So people kind of think she's going crazy and,
Yeah.
needs her heroin, or I think is what she's doing, And so, but she's just playing this kind of, I don't know how to put it. It's not frenetic. It's not, but like insecure, but also like, don't mess with me because I'm tough.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like you could put that in most current day, like you could put that in a modern day horror movie and no one would bat an eye at it.
So good.
Whereas, like Kincaid's performance, like that's like a little too big, a little too
very
broad,
cheesy,
and I think a lot of them are big and broad, but like for the time period in this movie, it works really well. But hers just feels like, oh, I've met so many people that act and have like the mannerisms that you are doing. Excellent. My MVP of the movie. I'm glad that you feel exactly the same way, though. That's kind of awesome. We are in love.
Wow, we are.
Yeah. And so then we find out that Nancy is on a drug called Hypnosil.
Yeah.
That prevents her from dreaming. And at some point, I don't think it's right here, but soon she's going to suggest that they give the kids Hypnosil.
That's not until people start dying, Micah.
You're right. Okay.
So we can get to Joey's death. Is it Joey?
No, it's Philip.
Philip. So they're all doing lights out. Some people do like the roommate situation. One person watches the other person sleep, and then they switch because they're also afraid. And Philip and Kincaid's case, they're both just sleeping. And Philip starts dreaming. He makes puppets, some like marionette puppets.
Yeah.
And one of them turns into Freddy. Oh, looks so good.
Yeah.
Stop motion.
It cuts its strings and falls onto the ground and lands like claymate. Yeah. Oh, stop motion. You just said that.
And then it goes in front, and he like grows to real size in front of Philip.
Which also looks pretty cool. Yeah.
And then he pulls out like the nerves.
It's like tendons, I think.
On his arms and legs, and it is actually hard to watch.
Yeah. He rips them out, and then Philip is going in and
now
like
Philip's the puppet.
Right. Which I don't know. I don't think I picked up on that until they show him. The puppet thing?
Yeah.
I guess I didn't connect that he was being a puppet at that point until they show Freddy above him.
Really?
Yeah.
Micah, come on, buddy.
Sorry.
It's okay.
And he's getting like dragged down the hallway. And it's great because we're cutting in between the dream where you see the tendons pulled and he's getting pulled like a kind of like a puppet, marionette, one would say. And then it's cutting between that and then the reality where it just looks like he's sleepwalking, almost like punching his fist around.
Which they said earlier that he is a sleepwalker.
Yeah. And then Freddy takes him to the top floor, and then he makes him dance around,
trying to get him to wake up.
Yeah. Dancing around with him, and then he's above the building, huge.
It looks so good. It looks so
It really
good.
does. It some of the effects, some of the more special effects in this movie, like that and his enlarging, like they don't look as realistic as they would look now. But I
don't
think
care. That doesn't even matter.
Well, I think they're more charming. And it does feel a little more dreamy-ish. Than maybe how they would do it today. And then he cuts the strings, the tendons, and then he falls to the ground dead.
Amazing.
Fantastic death. Poor Philip, but boy, we love to see it.
And crazy too, they had like the group circle the next day and they're talking about it. And, all the kids know that Freddy killed him. Yeah. But the adults, aside from Nancy, are like, no, he killed himself. He quit. Yeah. And then they're like, he was awake the whole fall down. He doesn't he wasn't. Because I think they're also saying like he just slept walking. It was this blah blah blah, and they're like, no, he didn't do that. Yeah. So good.
Awesome. So then they have in that group, Kincaid really freaks out and he gets sent to the silent room. And then Nancy is able to convince, what's his name?
Neil.
Neil to give them Hypnosil.
Not yet. Not until after the next kid.
Okay, that's what I have listed.
Okay, maybe
next.
I guess you're right, but I don't think so.
Well, what's the next kid?
He goes in the coma.
Oh no, that's a little bit later. That's after TV Girl gets killed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so they prescribe the Hypnosil, and then Taryn comes out of the shower, and there's a guard there just waiting for her. And he's like, basically, hey, if you want to get high, I know where all the stuff is.
This
just
guy
a
sucks.
creep.
Yeah.
Just wanted to point out that he sucks, and he should have had a death in the movie.
Yeah, what? They kind of forgot about him.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it just shows, like, kind of her bad situation.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, on that level, it works. But, yeah, it is kind of like, here's this creep, and then they don't do anything with it. But, I mean, it's not like there isn't a ton of history to suggest that people abuse people in state hospitals
Yeah, I mean, that's
and
true.
asylums. So, it's not very far-fetched, unfortunately. And then they're all trying to stay awake, and we have TV Girl, is what I wrote. I'm forgetting her name. Stephanie?
It might be Stephanie. That sounds right.
Jessica?
Jennifer. One of those names. She's going to be an actress, so she likes watching TV, but she's also too afraid to go to sleep, so she convinces Larry Fishburne to let her stay up watching TV.
Yeah.
That's when she watches the talk show. She burns herself with a cigarette to stay awake.
Yikes.
Crazy.
And then she sees the Dick Cavett show.
Uh-huh.
He makes some kind of one-liners at Zsa Zsa Gabor. And then it's Freddy. So once again, I mean, not to bring this up, but once again, Nightmare on Elm Street did it first, Todd Phillips. Your ending of Joker isn't as good as this scene. And so then Freddy kills Zsa Zsa Gabor, and then she comes up to the TV, or is like sucked to the TV. I can't remember which.
She comes up to it because she's trying to change it.
That's right. And then hands come out of the TV, like metal stuff, and they grab her, and then like his face comes up out of the TV, and he says, F the prime time, bitch. And it's his first bitch.
Uh-huh. And it's strong.
And then he throws her into the TV. And then when you come out, the TV is above the ground, so her body is head in the TV, and she is hanging there. Pretty great death.
It's so crazy. By the way, with the B word, if anyone's seen Rick and Morty, there's a really funny Freddy Krueger bit in one of the episodes. And he just says the B word like crazy in the bit.
And I think they're in a dream, and he's
it
like
might be
chasing
interdimensional. One of the interdimensional cable episodes.
No, I don't think. No, because they're in it. He's like chasing them.
Oh, okay, but remember, there's the post credit of that episode is him coming home.
Yeah.
And they all call each other the B word, but
Yeah.
it's like affectionate.
Yeah.
But it's so funny. And at the time I saw that episode, I'd never seen a Nightmare movie.
Uh-huh.
So I was just like, man, he just must call everyone the B word.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And we watched when I watched the first movie, it's like, I don't think he said the B word. Second movie, he didn't say the B word. What does this happen? And we get to this movie and he finally says it. And it's a pretty hard one. So it's like, I guess that's it. And then I think by the next two, he says it a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it makes sense.
Because, when we watch the next two, I think he drops it 4 or 5 times, I think.
I think it's definitely the next one, too.
Yeah.
And
I think there was one where it was like a scene where he said it a lot.
Uh-huh.
Where it's kind of like, okay, this is...
We get it. Okay.
But maybe it's like, in Friday the 13th, as we learned from our recent guessing on 90 Under 90... Jason doesn't even get the hockey mask until part 3. True. So in Nightmare 3, he dons his vocabulary finally.
True.
Then we see this mysterious nun at the funeral of Philip. Is that right?
I think so.
And we actually saw her earlier in the movie, and she disappeared. And only the Neil is seeing her. And so he talks to her, and she kind of says, this is a terrible evil, and it needs to be destroyed, and it needs to be hallowed ground, or something like that. I don't know if she says that in that scene, but...
She doesn't, but yeah.
And then
she needs to be laid to rest or something.
Kind of disappears. And that's it. with her.
Yeah.
So then we start. We're at the group again, where they're all in the doing therapy, and we realize and find out that Freddy is targeting these kids because they're the last descendants of the parents that murdered him.
I think they could have done a better job at this.
Really?
Because it's just like an offhand comment.
Oh, okay.
Because,
okay. What do you
Nancy,
mean?
You're talking about when Nancy says it.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you know that?
Oh, I guess
they
you're right.
like don't show us any proof of that.
Yeah.
It's just kind of weird. It's just kind of like thrown in there.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I would agree with you. I liked the twist of it, I guess.
I like it. It's just I don't like how it was done.
Yeah, so I just was like blindsided by that fact because I thought they were just, he's just attacking more kids. But then I was like, oh, that's cool. They're connected.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't even think about the fact that they don't show us that connection in any real way.
Mm-hmm.
Even like the mom, I don't think says or does anything about it. Patricia's mom.
No.
But then Nancy has convinced Neil, like, let me just try something. And so they attempt to hypnotize. Now, this is a great sequence.
Mm-hmm.
He hypnotizes everybody, and they all go to sleep. And it's dramatic, shot well. We're dollying in on the stinking, pendulum, the swinging pendulum. And then they all look around because they want to be sucked into Patricia's dream.
Mm-hmm.
Because she can pull them all together. They can team up. They can beat Freddy. But they look around and they go, ugh, well, that didn't work. We'll try again. And then, meanwhile, Joey kind of stands by the door and he sees this nurse. And he's made eyes at her earlier in the movie. But then the nurse goes, come here, Joey. And he follows her. And then this is... He goes into this other room. The nurse strips down and starts getting down and dirty with Joey. And I think most people, you're watching it and you're like, oh, they are in a dream. If you're witnessing that, because it's so gratuitous. Which, I mean, it's not like horror movies don't go gratuitous, but you're watching it and it's like, oh, this is what a teenage boy would dream about.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't reality anymore. And while that's happening, the group in the other room realize that they're dreaming. And now let's break down their powers, Jordan.
Yeah, because they're like, what is something that you've always wanted to do?
Mm-hmm.
So Patricia Arquette can do parkour.
Yeah.
The guy with the glasses.
In my dreams, my legs are fine. I'm the wizard master.
Yep.
Okay.
And then Kincaid is strong.
That's a good one.
And then Taryn looks like the most dated thing you could ever watch in a movie.
Uh-huh.
Where she's like, in my dreams, I'm beautiful. But it is like, oh, but 80s version of beautiful.
Yeah.
And then she holds up her hands and has knives. And she's like, am bad.
Yeah. And yeah, it's kind of funny because it's like, Wizard Master, the delivery's strange. I get it, though. That's a good power to have. Being strong, good. But, like, Patricia Arquette can just... She's, like, slightly more athletic than she probably is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, like, if I was rewriting the movie, I would spend time to make the powers different. Because I think the powers are pretty lame.
I agree.
And even the good ones aren't really used in an interesting way.
No.
That's certainly, like, I guess the weakest part, which... The movie's so good that it's okay, But I mean, it's just kind of like they have lame powers in their dreams. And I feel like with Patricia, they should have just said your power is bringing everybody together. You don't have like somersault powers because she's the one that's bringing them all together. That's the power. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But then Joey's with the nurse, and then the nurse shoots her tongue at his arms and shoots like 4 tongues at him, and it straps him to the bed. Now, they shot an alternate sequence to this. where the actress wore like a Freddy makeup head. So there was like the naked her
Ew.
with the Freddy on top. And they have the footage in the video and stuff. And everyone who watched it, they were just like, this is too nasty. Like, I don't like it. And then on top of that, I think the director said, like, just nobody can do Freddy except Robert Englund. So it just didn't, like, play well either.
Yeah, that feels weird.
Yeah. And then the actor pointed out, because he's strapped, with his extremities pulled apart, and then the bed drops, and there's, like, hell beneath him. And he said they shot that sequence with him, like, he's upright.
Oh, okay.
And then the hell is behind him.
Oh, okay.
But he pointed out that it was really tough, and he mentions that, like, that's your heart can't pump blood to your extremities when you're strapped up like that. And he's like, that's like how they would crucify people. So I think it sucked to be him on those days of shooting where he had to do that.
Yeah, that doesn't sound fun.
No.
It looked cool though.
Looks great. And then they all wake up, but Joey's now in a coma.
Yes.
And so that's where they're at with the movie.
And
by the way, we didn't mention that Joey doesn't speak.
I said that.
Oh, you did? Okay.
A long time ago. And then the whole operation gets shut down.
Yes. And it's like they're going to lock all the doors, keep the kids in at night, and that's what they're going to do.
Take him off that medication.
Yes. We have a Nurse Ratched type, delivering all of this news, although a little more sympathetic.
I think she's okay. I get where she's coming from on all her stuff.
I do too. I think she's actually, again, I think that's a great performance. She does a great job in the movie.
What's best for the kids. Unfortunately, what she thinks is best is not what's best.
Yeah.
But.
And then the Neil, I cannot remember his name. He sees the nun again in this like tower building, follows her into the tower, and then we find out, and I guess trigger warning for any abuse things you may have been through. Now trigger warning has exceeded. What?
Nothing.
Oh, I'm just trying to warn in case.
No, I know.
Yeah. So we find out that Freddy Krueger was not birthed. That there was.
Conceived.
Yes, there was.
Just let me say it.
Okay.
The nun. He follows the nun into a ward that has been blocked off for a very long time, and the reason that's blocked off is because a very long time ago, a nurse was accidentally locked in this ward, and this is like where they kept all the worst of the worst and the most dangerous.
Nun, not a nurse, but yeah.
She was a nurse.
Really?
Yes.
Oh.
The worst of the worst. And I thought, I just think all of this is kind of silly.
Yeah.
She was accidentally locked in here. Okay.
Yeah.
But then she was there for days and she was taken advantage of hundreds of times, which I think is also silly.
Yeah.
But basically he is the son of hundreds of, of 100 maniacs is what they say. All that's like, I get like, oh man, he's really deranged because of these all things and trauma and this stuff. But it's like, I don't think that flies anymore.
Yeah, I don't think you'd be putting that in a modern movie.
No.
I'm conflicted about it because I think that type of abuse is very overused in horror.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like not so much anymore, but like in this time period. But it also, story-wise, for me, it's like it's such an evil thing to imagine that it is like, oh yeah, of course Freddy's crazy.
Yeah.
Like for me in this weird fantasy Nightmare on Elm Street world, that explanation actually works better than if they were like, oh, he found this magical diamond and now he controls sleep or something.
Okay.
But, that's semantics, I guess. But it's kind of, I think the first time we watched it, I was like, ugh. But I think on the second time, I'm like, I do think that's kind of an interesting backstory.
I just don't need a backstory.
Well, that's
personally.
true. That's true.
That's a personal preference, really.
But
like he killed a ton of kids. I don't know. That's pretty bad. So
I do just think though that like because this movie's so imaginative and like ethereal and strange that something like that to me doesn't even feel like it feels very much a part of it all.
Sure.
So it does work for me, but you know, I
just think it's silly.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna sit here and like defend it. It's a preference thing. But then we're introduced back to John Saxon, the dad of Nancy.
What a surprise.
And now he's a security guard.
Mm-hmm.
And
he's a drunkard.
He's a drunkard.
Because not seeing life
his
got
family.
crazy a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And he's coping with it through alcohol.
Yes. And I think he's also, like, he's better in this movie than the first movie, I think.
I agree. He's great. Neil finds out through the nun that he needs to find the remains of Freddie and bury him in hallowed ground.
Yes.
That's why they find him and Nancy go to her dad, because he's one of the parents that killed Freddie.
Yes.
He would know where he's, wherever his body is.
And you know what? Actually, I think they say he's the last one that would know. No, they do say that. So I think they either say this or they imply that Patricia Arquette's dad, who is no longer
in the picture,
around/alive.
No, he was alive.
Oh, he was?
He said her parents divorced.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I'm not sure why she's involved in it then.
Don't think too much.
Yeah. They just kind of botched that a little bit, I guess. Anyway. And he takes some convincing, but I do like that Neil just like pushes him up against the wall and he's like, you're going to fix this and you're going to help me and we're going to go do this right now.
Because Nancy has to go back to the hospital because they put Patricia in the quiet room and sedated her. It's really bad.
Yeah. And then Neil goes to a cathedral and
a church.
He jumped. Well, yeah. We were in France recently, so
all churches are cathedrals now. Anything with a stained glass window.
Croissant. And then John Saxon's sitting there, and he's like drinking while he's driving and stuff. And Neil grabs his alcohol and he's like, "What are you doing?" And he dumps it out. And then he goes into the church and gathers holy water. I'm all about this thing. I love this. And then he grabs a crucifix. And this priest sees him and he's like, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "I'll bring it back." And he hands him his driver's license and says, "Here, take my driver's license," and goes. Okay.
Wow.
That's sort of like, I love the attention to detail, but it's also like, he could have just grabbed it and left. Yeah. I don't know why we need like an extra couple of shots.
Because it's a church and guilt and blah, blah, blah.
Sure. And then they head to where his body is,
which is a junkyard.
Yes. And then
meanwhile, Nancy can't get to Patricia.
Yeah.
But she does get to the other kids. And they're like, "How are we going to help her?" She says, "We can't help her anymore. We all have to go to sleep because she's going to fall asleep. And that's how we help her."
Yep.
So they hypnotize themselves into sleeping and find her.
Yep. And then Patricia wakes up at the beginning of the movie. At the same point that she woke up at the beginning, sees her mom. And I can't remember what I thought the first time, but there's got to be a movie where like this happens, right? Where like someone wakes up and like the whole first hour of the movie or something has been a dream that Freddy's been messing with them. Like
Is that how you feel?
Like, don't they have to do that in one of these movies? Isn't that like such an obvious thing?
But you don't think that's what happened here, right?
No, it doesn't.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't. But
yeah, maybe.
But when it happened the first time, I think there's probably part of me that was like, "Oh, has this movie been a dream?"
I mean, the closest thing to that is Inception.
Yeah. Well, I know in movies, but I mean,
you mean this franchise?
Franchise. Like, I feel like this is the one franchise. I mean, besides Inception, I love that, but the one movie that like that would feel like a cool payoff if someone woke up and everything was a dream, because this is about dreams. Just like Inception worked because it's about dreams.
Well, we got a lot of movies to go.
That's true. We do. But then her mom's there, and then Freddy comes up and cuts off her mom's head, holds it, and her mom says something like, "I'm very disappointed in you," or something like that. Kind of, yeah, a nuts effect. Again, I'm not really sure how they did it.
Mm-hmm.
It's great. And then everybody's in their dreams. And Nancy's trying to bring them together.
Mm-hmm.
Not Nancy, Patricia. I like how we have not figured out what her character name is, and we just call her Patricia. No, we can continue to do so.
I want to know now. Kristen,
you know her, you love her. And then we see Taryn face off, because all the kids are going to face off with the nightmare elemental himself, Mr. Frederick Krueger. And Taryn is in her garb, and she's like, let's dance. And she starts fighting and stabbing. And I wrote down, this is the worst part of the movie.
Yeah, it's awful. It's pretty bad.
Because it's so bad. But then it switches. And I am like, okay, it's actually kind of cool.
Well, it's just like they wrote this just so they could have some cool effects.
Yeah. Well, I think they said, so there was going to be some effect where like Taryn's head exploded.
Whoa.
And that's how he killed her. But it just didn't work. They weren't able to do it.
Huh.
And they weren't getting it to work. So then they came up with the needle thing.
Oh.
And the needle thing is great.
Oh, it's gross.
So Freddy like pulls up his claws, and now they're heroin needles. And then he goes, let's get high. And he goes up to her, and then her track marks are like eels. And they're like opening and stuff. And then he goes to stick them in.
Leeches or something.
That's yes, like leeches, not eels. And then he goes to stick them in her, and that's what kills her.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I also found out that Taryn, the actress, gets fan mail, and kind of the movie doing good. A lot of people said that after they saw this movie, they quit doing drugs.
Whoa.
Because of her in that scene.
Crazy.
So that's pretty great.
Yeah.
And then she dies. So it's like that scene is kind of stupid and sucky. And then like that turn is so aggressive and sharp and so mature and dark that I'm like, okay, this scene rules.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get to see the Wizard Master.
Oh my gosh, it's so bad.
This is pretty bad.
He's in a corridor, our Wizard Master.
Yes.
And there's this really crazy, torturous looking wheelchair at the end, and Freddy's at the other end. And he's toying with him. The wheelchair's blazing toward the kid. He knocks it out. He jumps out of the way, and then he's like, I'm the Wizard Master.
Yeah.
And then it's like, bloop, and he has this awful robe on.
Uh-huh.
Oh, it looks so bad. And he like flies to Freddy or something, and then just gets killed immediately.
Yeah.
It's like they really ran out of ideas.
Yeah, it's not.
And his kill is so not creative. When we just had the Terran one, he just gets stabbed.
Yeah.
With his claws. That's it.
Which I guess he just had a piece of board there. And so the actor was like, I really hope that he doesn't miss.
His claws were real?
I guess so.
What?
I know that's not a great.
That's scary.
Not great. And then I wrote Freddy makes door. Oh, yes. Yes. Then you have Kincaid, Kristen, and Nancy. And they all have found each other, and they like break into the room. And then this floating door comes in front of them. Now, if you are keeping a list of things Micah likes about movies, one thing I love is a good floating door.
It's sweet.
Or a door that, because it's usually coupled with a door that when you open, what it's looking into is different from what's behind the door in our world.
Micah's a big Monsters, Inc. fan.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. And it's a big concept in the Dark Tower series. And when he describes it, I can like visualize the doors completely. And it's amazing. And so get your toy, Gilmore. Uh-oh, he's stomping. He's after it. So maybe I should mark it, or maybe I shouldn't. Let him hear Gilmore. So then he makes a door, they go in, and they're like in the boiler room.
Yep.
And
this is where Joey is. Suspended over hell or something.
And this is also where a little more interesting stuff on Freddy, too. He removes his shirt, And he says these are the souls of the children, and there's
They
these
keep me alive.
Yeah, there's like all these weird small faces
like,
that are screaming.
And there's like fluids coming out of them. It's so gross.
It's gnarly in all the right ways.
But they start fighting him. Well, Nancy's trying to save Joey. They're fighting him. And then meanwhile, Neil and Nancy's dad have found the remains of Freddy and are trying to bury him. And when they start, Freddy disappears in the dream world because he's got to take care of business.
Yes.
With these two jabrones. And his skeleton becomes a skeleton.
Yeah.
And he's fighting them. And
It's pretty goofy looking.
I love it because it's so campy.
Yeah.
I just love that they still thought that they needed to do the choreography where, he's like fighting with like the shovel. Like it's a sword. And he does a turn.
Yeah.
A 360 turn that we see in movies all the time that never actually make practical sense.
Yeah.
It looks so bad, but I love it.
Well, so here's what I'm curious about mechanics-wise, rules of the world. Now, he can only appear and attack people in their dreams. And the only reason in 2, that by my surmising, the only reason in 2 that he's able to attack people who aren't dreaming is because he's occupying another body. Mm-hmm. So how is he able to appear to them at the end of this movie?
He's that evil, Micah.
Yeah. I mean, do you have a thought on that?
No, I don't. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but it I wish it did. I mean, I guess he does have his own body to occupy.
No, Micah, it doesn't make sense.
Maybe, I mean, if you know the answer, join our Facebook page. The link is in this episode, and let us know what you think the answer is, and we can discuss it on our Facebook, the Macabre Podcast Universe Pandemonium page. It's a lot of fun over there. I think, right?
I hope so.
Yeah. And then, so then they knock him down and they start throwing the holy water on him. No. Before that, Freddy attacks him in the mirror room.
Well, Freddy kills Nancy's dad.
Oh, yeah.
And
he
then
shoves him into like a fender of a car, stabs him.
And then he like hurts Neil and gets him in the grave and like throws some dirt on him. And then he disappears. Ends up, his bones fall. And then we get the mirror room.
Yes. And mirror room's okay.
I think it's cool.
Yeah, I guess it's really cool.
Joey gets to use his talent, which is talking. And the mirrors shatter.
You found your dream power, man. Is a line in that scene. And they all shatter. And then
so that's when Neil is starting to bury or put the holy water and the crucifix on the bones in the grave and is burying it.
Yeah.
And is like saying from ashes to ashes, dust to dust. And meanwhile, Nancy is fighting Freddy. Freddy stabs her.
Before he does.
Oh, yeah.
Her dad appears to her and he goes, Nancy, I've crossed over.
Oh my gosh.
And
that's the worst effect. It's just so funny how bad it is in this movie.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. But again, kind of like the Taryn death scene. It's like, you're like, this is kind of stupid. And then it turns into Freddy. And it was like his ploy again. And you're like, oh, okay, it's kind of cool again.
Yeah.
He stabs Nancy.
Mm-hmm.
And then Neil, I wish I could remember his dang name. Neil starts sprinkling holy water, like you said, ashes to ashes, and then it's like bursting light out of Freddy, and then he dies.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're shown at a gravesite, and we're seeing a funeral. And while it's going on, I was like, oh, I think this is a misdirect because they're actually at her dad's funeral. And then they're like, Nancy lived a good life.
I know.
And she died.
Crazy. I don't remember that. And it's only been like a year since we've seen it. And I just couldn't remember.
Well, it is wild because I don't think you have to kill people for stakes. And I don't think you always should. But it's wild for a franchise to kill off every person that's been in the first movie.
Yeah.
I think the only person they could bring back is Nancy's mom, maybe?
No, she died.
Oh, yeah, at the end of the movie.
Uh-huh.
Or no.
Micah, she died.
Yeah,
Micah? She's dead.
Okay. But because I think if you made this movie now, you would not kill Nancy.
Mm-hmm.
Because
she'd be the final girl.
Yeah, and then she'll show up in the next one, and the next one, and the next one. But they did it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually a very surprising and good.
Yeah.
And sometimes something that I enjoy about this franchise is there is a bit of a like wipe the slate clean mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Which is how a lot of franchises in the 80s and 90s worked.
Well, because like every movie is their last shot.
Yeah, and we love franchises. That's what we talk about. But it is refreshing to watch this series that is not trying to build to some sort of event movie.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Or
I
like
agree.
a cameo crossover thing. Well, it is building up to a crossover, kind of. But that's in a few years, and we'll talk about that. But yeah, I like this movie a lot.
I love this movie so much.
It's really good.
It is an amazing movie. Oh yeah, and you didn't say Neil sees the nun at the cemetery, goes over, she leads him to a gravestone, and it is really cheesy. But like the nun,
I like this.
I like it too.
this.
But the nun disappears, and he's like, "Oh, you were his mother."
Yeah, because you see that it says Amanda Kruger.
Hmm.
Yeah, I love that touch. I think it's great.
So I guess she was a nun. So that's why you said she was a nun.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was pretty sure. But I was like, oh, maybe maybe it's like Touched by an Angel and she's a nun in the afterlife. That's not how it worked in Touched by an Angel. Do you guys remember Touched by an Angel, that show?
Yeah. That was like the Christian show, right?
Yeah, we used to watch it all the time.
Yeah. That's right.
I bet it's not very good.
No. It can't be.
Nah. But anyway, so we were talking about Touched by an Angel next week. No, yeah, is that everything on Dream Warriors?
I think so. Watch the movie if you haven't.
Great,
It's
yeah.
a fun time.
Well, next week we'll be covering Nightmare 4, which I believe is the Dream Master. But it might be for something, the Dream Child.
I do feel like that's the... Yeah, I don't know.
I think it's the Dream Child.
Okay.
I can't remember. I get the next two confused. But folks, today is November 4th. And
Whoa.
do you know what November 4th is, Jordan?
I do.
What is November 4th?
Your album came out today.
Today, A Beautiful Divorce is out everywhere. Tidal, Spotify, YouTube, Bandcamp. Did I mention Spotify? Apple Music. And you can listen to it. You can buy it. There are t-shirts on my Bandcamp. There are posters on my Bandcamp. And tonight, if you're listening to this on November 4th and you're in the Rogue Valley, we will be doing a show at the Eden Ballroom in Grants Pass. Doors at 7. And we're playing the album front to back with a 5-piece band. None of these songs have been performed in front of an audience before.
And they're cool and good.
Yeah, this is a good album, folks. And if you could please listen to it and share it, it would mean the world to me. And when you do, oh my gosh, the dog is pulling the interface apart. When you do, share it, let me know so that I can join in the fun with you.
Gilmore doesn't give an F about your album. He's done. He's done.
He's heard me practicing quite a bit. But please listen to it, and then please come back next week and join our Patreon. Mm-hmm. Guess what? If you sign up for the $5 tier on Patreon, you can scroll back like a week or two, and you get a download of the album because I'm giving the album away to patrons.
Crazy taxi.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, folks.
Sweet dreams.
1, 2, spooky podcast for you. 3, 4, lots of blood and gore. 5, 6, Freddy's goofy tricks. 7, 8, another deadly fate. 9, 10, never podcast again.